Welcome to our Touch of Torah with Va-Dor and Rabbi Barry Silver. We're thrilled to have you this March 28th, Tuesday evening, our weekly Zoom program that we discuss the Torah in a rational manner with Rabbi and with our participants. So join us for our Touch of Torah and take it away, Rabbi Barry Silver.
Thank you very much. The Torah reading this week is TSAV. TSAV is a word that probably doesn't mean much to you unless you realize that it's related to the word mitzvah. TSAV is in the middle of mitzvah. It means command. So it's from the first word of the Sedra, the chapter, which God's telling Moses to command the people of Israel. And then he goes into all these really arcane sacrifices. Each one is grislier than the next, about dismemberment of animals and what you do to their blood and all this stuff. There is one part of the Sedra that doesn't involve the death of animals. And that's the part that involves the death of people. It's a very obscure verse. The rabbis struggle to figure it out. If you're a rational thinker, you have no trouble at all. You just chalk it up to this was a primitive story, and it's not infallible. It's written by people who had a vivid imagination, and they just came up with all types of things. But if you attribute it to a divine, perfect, good, all-knowing source, it's kind of hard to figure out what's going on. So what's happening is this. God is commanding the people to make sacrifices, and also the priests bring fire, a flame, and some kind of fire pan. They have some kind of flame that they bring. So Aaron's two sons, Nadav and Abihu, these two sons bring what's referred to as Esh Zahar, strange fire. And what happens is, apparently God wasn't pleased with their fire, and so the two of them are consumed. They're burnt. They're burnt to death by the fire. No, the rabbis can't understand why. It doesn't explain what was wrong with it, what they did wrong. They seem to be doing everything right, but the fire is described as strange fire, not commanded by God. I didn't know there were different types of fire. And then afterwards, the aftermath is almost as unfathomable as the beginning. Then Aaron says, Aaron's just totally silent. He doesn't know what to say. He's just completely silent. And then Moses says, well, I guess that's what God meant when he said that those who are closest to me will serve me. Nobody really knows what that means either. It's very obscure. So what that means, the people who are closest to me will serve me, nobody really knows. The rabbis, the greatest rabbis in history, have all struggled to come up with anything rational, but they can't come up with any explanation. But I have an explanation, of course. My explanation is that if you're on fire with religious zeal, but you're just following orders irrationally and you're not really thinking, you're just on fire, then you might get too close and you might be dangerous to yourself and others. It's better to try to approach things rationally than just do whatever you're told and mess with fire. So that doesn't make a whole lot of sense either, but that's as close as I can come to some kind of explanation to it. But we do see that people who are on fire with religious zeal and get a little too close to a literal view of God cause all types of trouble. We see it in Israel, where the Orthodox are leading into destruction. And we see it in the United States, where the fundamentalist Christians are leading us into destruction. So both of these groups are just filled with religious zeal and not a whole lot of reason, and they're causing all types of trouble. So that's the best I can come up with for this passage. I don't feel too bad, though, because the greatest rabbis and teachers in history have come up with nothing that makes any sense at all. So there you have it. If you'd like, we can talk about this passage a little more. Well, I do want to talk about what's going on in Israel and also gun violence. So I'll turn it over to others. Meanwhile, I see that I forgot to turn the ringer off of my phone, so I'm going to go take care of that problem. Okay. Now, does anybody have anything that they'd like to share about the passage or about what's going on in the world?
Well, I think maybe some ufologists might think that maybe they were beamed up or disintegrated with a ray.
Yeah,
If you
right.
believe.
Well, part of them was still there. Their bodies were there and they were buried. So they weren't totally burnt to a crisp. They were just consumed. They were consumed by fire. And I would say they were maybe consumed by the fire of religious zeal. And when that happens, then you bear the risk of dying from it. Kind of like the Branch Davidians, you know, these people who are just crazed with religious zeal, but you can't really make much sense out of the passage. Anybody else want to take a stab at it, or you want to move on to bigger and better things? All right, so let's hear what people think about Israel. Who would like to share some thoughts about what's going on in Israel?
Well, I think I had mentioned this the last time we spoke about it. I just don't understand because Bibi Netanyahu is such a strong, common sense leader that really looked at things very rationally in his history, if you look back. And the fact that he was pulled so far off base, in my opinion, and not holding firm, I don't understand. I don't understand that. I really don't. You had to see the road he was walking down. He had to at least understand the road he was walking down to create this kind of havoc in Israel. And I don't understand why he did it.
Well, I think it's very clear, and I think it's very similar to what happens here in the United States. I think the way their government is set up, they need to form a coalition that is a majority. So they had to get the Orthodox into that coalition. And in order to get the Orthodox into the coalition, he had to do their bidding, and which was undermining the judicial system and setting up a type of government that is no longer very democratic anymore. It's pretty much run by the Orthodox. So he had to do that to keep his coalition. His keeping power was more important to him than the safety and the security and the democracy in Israel. And you see the same thing in the United States, where you see these Republicans who have no problem with an insurrection, have no problem with Trump threatening to violence against prosecutors, saying that he could shoot someone on Fifth Avenue. I mean, these people, a lot of them used to be very good politicians, honest politicians. You know, I didn't agree with all their policies, but there were a lot of Republicans who were very reputable and very straightforward and very honest and had integrity. It's all gone by the wayside now. They've just tossed it all away because they want to curry favor with the MAGA crowd. And I don't know if you know what MAGA stands for. Mutinous, anti-government anarchists. They want to curry favor with these people, and so they're running the party into the ground. And in Israel, they're threatening to run the country into the ground as well. We both suffer a similar problem. They have it with, in Israel, it's with Jews, fundamentalist Jews, and here it's fundamentalist Christians. So that's why what we're doing is really important. Trying to spread the word that let's use reason and logic and let's think things through and not just believe on blind faith. Anybody else want to share some thoughts about that, about Israel or the U.S.? Okay, then in that case, who wants to comment on the gun violence? I'm sure somebody has something to say about that.
Well, I don't think it's just the gun violence, but I've been noticing on television. I don't know if you've noticed it. There are commercials. If some of us get the commercials, and they have a little blue square on the television, and it said, "This is taking up 2.3 inches or percent of your television screen," which is how many Jews live in this country, and they are suffering from 55% of the violence. One of the main television stations show that, and it was on yesterday for several times, and it was very, very impactful, to show that the small percentage of your television, and then it had a number to call to support this organization. It was really very remarkable that a television station would take that stand. I was very
That is
surprised.
great. I hadn't heard about that. Thanks for sharing that with us.
Yes,
That's really good.
I will try to monitor which one it is, but it was on at least 5 times over the past week that I've seen it.
That's great.
So that was basically for anti-Semitism?
Right. It was saying that you see this blue. It said you see this blue dot on your television screen, and this only takes up 2.1% inches of your full television screen, and yet the violence that is committed against the Jewish population, which takes up that smallest percentage of the population, suffer 55% of the violence perpetrated against them in this
Yeah.
country. It was an amazing, and to support. I don't remember what the organization was, but it was a really remarkable.
Well, let's see if we can find out and then compliment them and congratulate them. That's really good.
Mhm.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
had mentioned a few weeks ago, I was seeing a bunch of ads that were on anti-Semitism and gun violence, gun control. I think I mentioned them to you, Rabbi, and they were
Yeah.
very impactful. I have not seen this commercial yet, though, Valerie,
Yeah.
and I'm looking
Yeah.
forward to seeing it.
I saw this Democratic state rep in Tennessee, and he was talking about gun violence, and he said, like, some of you people seem to like your guns more than children or something. And so the guy said, you're out of order. You're only allowed to share things that are, you have to share your honor and your respect with us. So he says, well, there's 6 people that I can't share my honor and respect with anymore. And I I think I should be able to say what I want to say, and they shut him down. It was really it was really pretty amazing. I don't remember the exact colloquy, but it was pretty amazing. In other words, in Tennessee, they don't have a problem with assault weapons. You can go out and carry those around and bring where you want. But if you say something that maybe rubs somebody the wrong way or they don't like, you're not allowed to do that in Tennessee. So words are forbidden, but semi-automatic weapons, they're fine.
That's
We're really in a sad
sad
state.
state. Yep.
We're in really bad shape. I mean, it's really unnerving, and the Republicans have no solution. It's just pretty much what their attitude is. We'll get used to it because everything's fair, and as long as we can get our hands on guns. And they say the way to stop somebody, a bad person with a gun, is to have a good person with a gun. That doesn't work. It hasn't worked in all these school shootings. It doesn't work. You need just like a second to wipe out a classroom, and so that's not working. What works? What was remarkable about this one is the police response. The police, these guys, I'm not sure about how long it took. I don't know if they messed up or not. It took like 16 minutes. I don't know, but eventually they confronted the guy with all these weapons and killed him. Whereas like in Parkland, they ran scared, and in other places they run scared also. Like they don't want to mess with a guy with a semi-automatic weapon. And the police, a lot of the police really don't like the weapons. They're for gun control. They don't like the criminals that have more firepower than they have. So a lot of them are strong supporters of gun control, but others aren't.
Well, this woman who shot all these children in Tennessee, she was only 28 years old, and she was under a doctor's care, from everything we're hearing, for a mental disturbance. She was mentally disturbed. So and she bought more than 7 different automatic weapons over a period of several years. And her parents knew that she was unbalanced, and so did one of her friends.
The parents are totally to blame. The parents should be put in jail. How do you have somebody who's mentally disturbed and you're allowing them to have all these weapons? That's just insane.
They're claiming they didn't know that she bought them. That's what they're claiming.
Yeah, well, if somebody's mentally disturbed, you ought to kind of keep an eye on them, make sure they're doing. Yeah, I know. That's what they claim. Who knows? Who knows what they knew?
Go ahead, Peter.
Yeah, I came in a little late, but I got the gist of what the topic of discussion is. And Barry, you're the perfect person to ask this to. And I've been thinking about this for years. It's not something that just swam up to the front of my mind recently with, all the unfortunate gun violence in the schools. But Barry, as an attorney, when you have cases like these and the defendant claims that they're insane, their client is insane. First of all, sanity and insanity, you can't be sane and kill someone unless you're protecting yourself. So I truly don't get how someone can claim that he was insane or she was insane. And you got to be insane in order to take a life. See? So can you explain this to me? How it's manipulated, or how it's like I can't even find the right word. Yeah, let's just temporarily use manipulated. How it's manipulated to think in a court of law that my client was insane. So that's it. It's based on insanity. You have to be insane to take a human life. So,
well, Peter, you raise a very interesting point in law. There's something called the McNaughton rule, and the McNaughton rule is a test to see if somebody is insane or not. And the test is, are they capable of distinguishing right from wrong? As you correctly observe, if you're taking innocent life, by definition, you can't. Now, it's not true that every time you take a life, it means that you're insane. I mean, there's a lot of reasons why people might take a life in self-defense, or maybe they see their wife in bed with another guy, and they're not insane, they're just filled with rage and they might kill them. That's called that's second degree, because it wasn't like premeditated, they just got really angry and they killed. It's still murder, but it's second degree murder. And there's cases like that. There's also cases where you take a life accidentally, like in a car, but sometimes the law says, well, what you did was so reckless and so careless, it's not negligent, it's more than negligent, it's gross negligence or manslaughter. And like if you drink and then you get behind the wheel and you know that you're putting other people in danger, that's more than just mere negligence. So the law has different degradations, but what you're saying is exactly right. And many people have commented exactly how you have. If somebody just takes a life for no reason, then obviously they can't distinguish between right and wrong. And so by definition, nobody would ever be found to be sane, and so they'd never be punished. On the flip side of that is that if they're found to be insane, then different things happen depending on the state. Some people, if you're insane, then you go to a mental hospital, maybe for 20 years, which I don't know if that's much better. Or you'd go to the mental hospital until you were deemed to be sane again. But there's different ways of dealing with that. But you're exactly right. There's a lot of difficulties in it. You know, like somebody might take a life because they want to get money from a store owner, or they might take a life because they want to do better. They want to get an inheritance and a will. So they're not insane. They're just cold and calculating, and they know exactly what they're doing. But you're right. Legal scholars have struggled with that one for a long time. It's the McNaughton rule.
Okay, thank you.
Well, I believe I think it's England. I'm not 100% sure, but there's an approach to the law called, I believe it's called the Jeffersonian law, which means you're guilty until proven innocent, not innocent until proven guilty. And in certain countries in Europe, I traveled a lot also, if someone does something very heinous and they think that somebody's insane and they can be proven insane, they don't say guilty by reason of insanity. They say guilty and insane, and they will treat their insanity, and then after they're deemed quote unquote capable of communicating and understanding, then they are put on trial for that particular crime. The crime is not dismissed.
They do that here too sometimes. Sometimes they do that. If the person becomes sane, they might put them on trial. But here's a very interesting question. Let's say that someone is raised religious and they believe in God, and they believe that they have a relationship with God, and God says to them, your child is evil. Your child is of the devil. Now, some parents, some moms have a postpartum depression, and their mind isn't really clear, and then maybe the kid's acting up and they don't know what to do with it. And if they hear a voice saying your kid's the devil, they could believe it. And so the voice tells them, kill your child because he's evil, he's of the devil. Now, what do we do if this person's been trained throughout the person's life to believe that if God tells you to do something, you do it, like with the sacrifice of Isaac by Abraham? You know, he's considered to be praiseworthy because God said kill him, and he said, okay, I'll kill him. He was ready to do it. And the three religions, including Orthodox Judaism, praise him for listening to a voice in his head saying to kill his son. Now, God at the last minute said, I was just kidding, you don't have to do it, but the lesson is there. So if somebody hears a voice in their head and they think it's God saying kill your son or your spouse or these other people or somebody from another religion or someone. Are they insane? I would argue, yeah, they are insane. Because to me, irrational religion makes people insane. They're no longer thinking rationally. And so if you're going to say that you can't execute someone who's insane, you should then say, well, if they're religious and they believe in an irrational form of religion, then they're insane. But I don't know if other people would agree with that or not. It's a difficult question in the eyes of the law. If people hear voices in their head and they think it's God telling them to kill, what do you make of that? You know, the law is not really clear on that one. What do you all think? Do you think that the person should be considered insane or should they be executed?
Yes.
Yeah, you think they should be executed because they, why? Because they should ignore what they've been taught all their life or ignore
And
their
the people that taught them that should go along with them.
Can I?
Well, that would be a whole bunch of ministers and teachers. I think you're probably right. They should be held somewhat accountable. I'm not they should be executed, but you're right. It takes a village.
I don't think they should ever see the light of day outside of jail or a hospital. Somebody who does this. How could you ever trust being around somebody like that or having somebody out among people who I would say aren't safe? It could happen again. And we've seen things like that happen again. Somebody's let out of jail after murdering somebody. They're let out of jail after a period of time. They do the same thing. We hear it often.
Yeah, but let's say the person is taught that you have a relationship with God and God speaks to us. And the person is taught that in the Bible, God's telling people to kill people all the time. It happens every other page.
Right.
And they're accounted praiseworthy. So if they're reading the Bible and they're told the Bible's God's word, and God tells them to kill someone, and the Bible says that you're supposed to do it, why would you say that this person should be executed? They're just
I don't
doing
care.
what they've been told.
I don't necessarily want to see them executed. I just don't want to see them where
Yeah.
they can do it, where they can do it again.
Agreed.
I don't. And I think there are fanatical people. I know that. And I don't know how we're going to change that. Among us, we're pretty rational. But
Well, the only way to change it is to try to get all religion to become rational. Just like science used to believe a lot of crazy stuff, and now it's follows rational views, and now science is a positive force. So we need to try to do what we can, and it's not going to happen tomorrow, but to encourage all religions to be rationally based. And the anti-Semitism is the same thing. These people who are anti-Semitic, they don't wake up one day and say, I'm going to be an evil person. They're taught in Christian scripture and all over the place on the internet that Jews are horrible people. So they think that they're doing the right thing. But I agree with you, Nancy. Regardless of whether we think that they should be held legally accountable or not, they should be removed from society so they can't do it again, either in a jail or executed or in a mental institution, but they should be separated from people.
And something I read online about this person, this most recent murderer, was she was gay or going through transgender, and it was in a family that and had gone to school, obviously, that was very irrational. And so, that I'm sure that was contributed to the state of mind. But it's, it made him a very dangerous human being, and probably always would be.
Yeah. Well, probably the church didn't take too kindly to her transgender lifestyle. They totally disagree with that.
It's a shame. It's a shame that people can't accept what somebody is. There always have been gay people, and now that many of us are a little more accepting, we hear more about it. But it's always been with many people against them.
The Bible's pretty clear. You stone a homosexual.
I know.
A man doesn't wear the clothes of a woman, and a woman doesn't wear the clothes of a man. It's very clear. So if you believe the Bible, then obviously you're not going to accept these people.
we could hardly tell the difference in the old days when they all wore robes.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah. Anybody else want to share any comments? Peter, go ahead.
Yeah, I've never been so talkative in my life during a Zoom meeting, but let's go back to the Bible, and where it states every other page, God says to kill someone. Or and let's also include the fact that in a court of law, if you're religious, there's got to be some sort of merit on, given to the side of the individual who's doing the the crime. Right. So if God is the epitome of good, and God is and the supreme being is infinite with infinite power and abilities, why would, in a court of law to begin with, let's start with that one, why it's so twisted to think about this, or not? It's not twisted in my mind. It's the whole concept and subject matter is twisted. Why would God, the epitome of good, tell someone to kill another human being? I hate to run my mouth off, but I just thought of this. The time when you had that rabbi on, and he said the rabbi said God can do anything, including making a 1,000-year-old tree appear out of the clear blue. There it is, 1,000-year-old tree. God can do anything. He could do anything, but he couldn't prevent the slaughter of 6 million Jews during the reign of Nazi Germany. There's such fantasy chasing in religion that, I keep my opinions to myself, but the subject matter tonight is about, about prosecuting, it's the whole concept of killing. Why would God, the epitome of good, tell someone to see? That's my question. It doesn't make sense to me, and it's in the Bible. So
that's a very good question. It's been asked many times. Why would God have these earthquakes that are destroying and leveling homes all over Mississippi and elsewhere, and doing all this damage in California? Why is that? These are very good questions. There's no rational answer, but the people who believe this are not rational. So if you want to understand their thinking, you have to stop thinking rationally, because you're not going to understand them. If you want to understand how they think, then you have to start thinking irrationally, and then you can understand it quite well. So God is the ultimate source of justice, and God knows more than we do. So if God thinks it's just for a tornado to come and level a bunch of houses and make people homeless, he has his reasons for it. We're too stupid to figure it out, but he's got reasons that are way beyond our abilities to comprehend. Maybe these people need to learn a lesson from hardship, or maybe these people who are dead are going to live happily ever after in the next world, or maybe they'll inspire other people to do good things to help, or maybe the Holocaust was necessary so the world would feel sorry for the Jewish people and give them a homeland in Israel. Or maybe, the excuses and rationalizations are endless. But I can tell you, Peter, that I've known Holocaust survivors who lived through that horror. And when someone said to them, it was necessary to have the Holocaust so we could have a state of Israel, the guy was like ready to strangle him and kill him.
Of course.
He was that was necessary. Wasn't there an easier way? Like just convince the countries of the world to do it? But Peter, when you say, well, I don't usually speak out, that's the problem. People don't speak out against faith. If somebody says, well, I have faith in God, oh, isn't it wonderful? They have faith in God. We can't challenge that, but we should, because blind faith leads to horrible results, especially for Jewish people. Blind faith in Islam and Christianity has been lethal for Jewish people. And we started it with blind faith in God, and then it metastasized in Christianity and Islam. That's why what we do, I like to think of us as evangelicals. All right, we're trying to, evangelical literally means good news. We're spreading the good news that religion doesn't have to be the way it's been, that there's a better way, a way that builds bridges of understanding and not walls of separation, a way that doesn't cause us to believe in things that are lethal, a way of believing in a creative power that's in alignment with science and reason that can help us to be better people, not insane. So I'm optimistic because we're on that path, and there's other groups that are on that path as well, but most other groups are not outspoken as we are Lador Vidor. Most of them give religion a pass. And I know that because a lot of groups don't have anything to do with me because they think I'm critical of other religions, and their view is we should never, ever, ever criticize somebody else's faith, never criticize anything in the Bible, never criticize anybody's religion. And when you give a pass to evil and you fail to chastise it, then the Bible in Leviticus says, if you don't chastise evil, then you share in the iniquity of the evildoer. And so if we don't say something, we share in it. Especially we have an obligation to say something about other Jewish people, especially what's going on in Israel, where the Orthodox are trying to drive Israel into a ditch or into the abyss with some kind of fundamentalist religion that doesn't accept democracy. Well, there you have it. It's been a pleasure. Anybody have any final comments they'd like to share? I know, Sharon, you might have some observations, but anybody else want to share anything?
There was also another commercial that goes on TV. I think Ronald Reagan Jr. has an organization. I believe it's called Atheists Against Government Interference. And he has this whole commercial. And at the very end, he says, "My name is Ronald Reagan Jr. and I'm not afraid of you telling me I'm going to burn in hell. That's nonsense." And
it's
telling I was watching him on television. He has a couple of commercials going like that. Atheists again. He says, "I'm an atheist." He says, "And I'm against government interfering in religion interfering in my government."
No, his last words are, "I'm an atheist and I'm not afraid of burning in hell for saying it." That's his day. It's very powerful. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I've dealt with his organization. In fact, we had a discussion with the co-director of that organization at Lador Vidor. He was on with us by Zoom. And if you go back into our archives, you could find it. I can't remember the guy's name or the organization, but it's an atheist organization. It's a very interesting discussion. I just want to share with you something else. I saw this episode of All in the Family. It was hilarious. And it was also very moving and touching in some ways. And it was talking about women's rights. And Archie was saying how women are viewed in the Bible, which was totally archaic. And I thought, it would be fun if we got together and we watched this episode of All in the Family over at Grand Villa. And then afterwards, we had a discussion about women's rights, because it was very interesting how Archie handled it and how Mike did, and Gloria and Edith, the way they approached it and the lesson at the end. But it was really funny and very, very moving. So I thought, you know what? That'd be cool. Let's watch an episode. It's about 23 minutes without commercials, maybe at Grand Villa. And then afterwards, we could follow with a discussion. And then I realized there's a whole bunch of episodes of All in the Family that tackle all types of issues. And there's other programs too that do that. We could watch, portions of programs and then have a discussion afterwards. So I thought it might be an interesting thing to do over at Grand Villa. Would anybody be interested in doing that?
Sure, definitely.
Yeah. All right, I'm gonna suggest it to them, and we'll see what we could do. Maybe it could be brought up at the board meeting. You could pass it along and see if anybody's interested.
So let me ask you, Rabbi, so did you watch that episode through YouTube?
I saw it on what they call Freebie.
You can't download them though. No, and also MeTV, but you can go on the internet and you could pull up certain episodes, and certain episodes will be seen because they're part of the public domain now.
Yeah, there was an episode where Archie was asked to speak at the funeral for Stretch Cunningham. This was hilarious. I don't know if you saw it, but he finds out that Stretch Cunningham is Jewish. It is hilarious. He goes, "What? Stretch Cunningham is Jewish? How can he be Jewish? He's got ham in his name." And and he goes up there. He goes up there and he gives the eulogy and he puts a yarmulke on. It's hilarious. It's hilarious, but like typical of the family, by the time he's done, it's like so moving what he said. He starts out completely like bumbling everything, but by the time he's done, he says something that is a real tearjerker. And so I don't know how you get access to this stuff, or if you can, but I'd like to find out because I think it would be really good. Yeah, that episode I know is on. I know we can get access to that. I've seen it. But let's look
Laura
into
just sent she just sent a text, so I'll look at it. I'll see if I can figure it out.
Very good. Thanks, everybody. Does
Thank
anybody
you.
have a last word? Peter, did you want to say something?
I just want to share.
No, I just was waving goodbye. That's
okay.
Okay.
So long, everybody. Sharon has announcements. Go ahead, Sharon.
Yeah,
Lay it
no, I
on.
was just going to say, join us for Shabbat on Friday evening, March 31st. Cantor Carol will be back with us, and we'll have a beautiful musical and inspiring Shabbat about love, harmony, peace.
Dr. Marcy Weiss is sponsoring the Oneg in honor of her dad, Jerry Dater. It's going to be really good. And I'll be speaking out about the usual issues and talking about the Torah passage. And it's always now an hour. Or last time it was less, but it's always going to be around 1 hour. So, and then we have the Oneg. So I encourage everybody to go. Yeah, should be very entertaining, and you get to meet people and inspiring. Thanks everybody for watching.
Perfect.
Thank
Good
you,
night,
Sharon.
all.
Good night, all.
Take
Thank
care.
you.
Night.
Laila Tov, buenas noches, bonsoir.